Welcome, everybody, and it's a pleasure to be here today to share with you on a couple of different topics that I will cover off in just a short amount of time, and I look forward to the opportunity of sharing with you today. So my name is 𝗪𝗲𝗽, and let's move forward as we go into the journey of how you can gain confidence, as well as being acknowledged or recognized. So what you'll find is that the agenda that I've got up here is just a five-parter. I'll share a little bit about me because I think that sets the tone of the workshop itself. I'm going to share with you the importance of communication skills, some engaging, how do you get into an engaging conversation, the art of the written communication, and presentation skills. So for those of you who are joining us, sit back, relax, and absorb what is being shared. But as I say to my students in university, still pay attention, just so you can capture some of the nuggets of information that are really important. So I want to share with you a little bit about who I am. Like, who is this person before you and why are they even here? The easiest way for me to describe myself is that I'm a speaker and a storyteller. My life is revolved around sharing stories. I think stories are such an important way for us to relate to each other, and we all have a narrative. I'm a mentor and a coach. About 3 to 8 people a week I wind up having a conversation over the last 20 plus years. That's been about 5,000 conversations to help people navigate in life and career. I'm an author, writer, and a blogger. So I've got 2 books that I've written. I've got about 190 blog posts that I've written. And the interesting thing about this is 10 years ago, that was not part of my life. I'm going to share a little bit later on how this came to be. I'm an educator, so I teach at SFU's Beatty School of Business, and even earlier today I delivered one of my lectures. And even being an educator, that 12 years ago was not even anything I had ever dreamed of doing, and I'll explain how that worked out as well. I'm an entrepreneur, intrapreneur. I've built out businesses, I've worked with startups, and equally at the same time, within a structured organization, I got to be entrepreneurial. I'm also a problem solver. The world is full of problems, and people can easily tell you what the problems are. You just have to flick on the news, and you'll hear all of our problems. I don't want to sit in the world of problems. I want to realize, how do we solve these problems? And I'm a community do-gooder. I've worked with about 50 nonprofits to help them become more entrepreneurial. I think that there's a need for us to not be bystanders in life. So if you see this, all of these things make up who this individual is. But what's interesting, I get a lot of people coming to me to try to get the answers to life with regards to what should I do for a living, what business should I own. Here's what I am not. I am not this orange saffron bearded man on top of a mountain that you are going to come and see, where I will say, let's say to Leslie, yes, my daughter, you will become this in your lifetime. No, I'm what you call a difficult monk. I'm an individual who will sit there to ask you questions, because the monk you seek lies within you. My job is to ask those questions to help you realize the true path and journey that you're on. The way I can best describe it is, we go through life with a compass in our hands, trying to figure out the journey, and the people who guide and direct you are the compass. Through this workshop and through the work that I do, I want you as an individual to be the compass needle. You are the needle that is going to guide your own pathway. A big important component of realizing your significance and your journey is the importance of this piece called communication, because it really is about building those relationships, the value that you bring forward, but the value within you as well. And how you engage, like it says customers, but how you engage with individuals, and having a strong level of communication awareness provides you success and loyalty in anything that you will do. So how important is communication? It's extremely important, because it's how we articulate, how we show up, and how we work with each other. When communication is lacking, unfortunately, that's when misunderstandings, miscommunications happen. Communication is also the powerful tool where employers are saying, are you able to articulate and are you able to share in front of anybody else? So this is the communication process model. It's very straightforward. In other words, think of it this way. And I'm going to ask for anybody who's here to go to chat, and you can actually put in what I'm about to ask you on what is noise. So I'm forming a message. I'm encoding this message and packaging it, and I'm sending it to you, the listener, the receiver. Where you're receiving this message, you're decoding it. Now, if this was in a class and I look around the room, you could see people who are, on their phones, tired, or any number of distractions. And that's transmitted back to me and I receive it and the feedback comes back. So I understand whether I get this, my message is getting through to you or not. In the middle is this thing called noise. If you don't mind, go to chat and share with me, what do you think we mean by noise? What is noise? Or give me examples of noise. So go ahead. So give me some examples of noise in the center there. What do you think it might be? I know it takes a couple of seconds for it to register in chat. What is noise? What do you think? So far, I have no responses. Okay. Okay, noise reducing transparency. So for example, lack of people turning on their cameras, which effectiveness of the feedback given to you. Yeah, I would agree, Leon, because what it does is it doesn't provide me the opportunity to see, whether people are getting the message. And Ethan, for sure, anything that might interrupt the message. So, think of it this way, noise is anything that disrupts this circular motion. And it could be things like you said, about not being able to see the participants, or it could be, my kids with the TV on too loud, or it could be, outside somebody with their lawnmower going, any number of things. It could be a visual distraction, it could be an auditory distraction, but the noise will distort the messaging that is available and that we have. So there's technical skills versus communication skills. And oftentimes in university, a lot of what we're learning is technical skills, things that are there from a theoretical perspective. But we definitely need the written communication skills to be able to articulate. The verbal communication, let's say, for example, for presentations, how are you engaging the audience so that they're interested in what you have to say? But there's also these nonverbal cues that you're sending off where, you fold your arms when someone's talking, or you're like, fingers up here like that, thinking and all that. The nonverbal cues are also equally important. And the interpersonal communications that happen that aren't the formal methods and ways that we would communicate with each other. Now, here's what experts are saying about the ability to communicate and the importance of soft skills. So when I was talking to the CFO and treasurer of 𝗪𝗀𝘃, he said, you cannot just rely on your technical skills to get you through the industry. The higher up you go, the more conceptual and soft skills become important. I would 100% agree with that statement, as I've worked with some senior officials in organizations over the years. So a senior recruiter at TELUS said, I see a lot of candidates and potential hires. If they can't carry a conversation or articulate details, it makes it very difficult to hire them. Written, verbal, presentation skills are critical developmental pieces. And the wealth manager at RBC Dominion Security. My clients and potential clients rely on my technical skills to grow their future. They stay with me because of my ability to engage and interact with them. Both technical and soft skills are integral to your success. I'm going to share with you an example of how important communication skills are. So my financial wealth advisor was BMO Nesbitt Burns. And I've been with him for years. And then just on a whim, or just in an abrupt moment, I got a call from BMO Nesbitt Burns' office. They said, your financial advisor is not available anymore. He's moved on. We don't know where he's gone, et cetera, et cetera. and we need to arrange an important meeting with you as soon as possible. And I was like, oh man, that doesn't sound like my financial advisor, where he just skipped town. And my comment to 𝗲𝗀𝗻𝗛 𝗪𝗏𝗧 is the person who called me, is my money safe? Because you wonder, did they take off with all your money? And they were like, oh yeah, no, everything's fine, don't worry, but we need you. We don't know where he's gone. The next day, same thing, 𝗲𝗻𝗻𝗪 𝗪𝗏𝗧, we really want to talk to you as soon as possible, get you into the office and make sure everything's fine. But I got a call on my cell phone, and I saw it was RBC Dominion Securities, and I thought, well, that's weird. But I missed the call, but there was a voice message. I clicked on voice message. It was my financial wealth advisor. He's now at RBC Dominion Securities. And he said, please give me a call as soon as possible at this number. So I called him, and he said, look, Sam, I was moving from 𝗲𝗻𝗻𝗪 𝗪𝗏𝗧 to RBC Dominion Securities. We couldn't say a word. We couldn't take any information. All I had was your personal cell number. And then we started talking. He says, I respect that you've been a BMO customer for many years. We'd love to have your business at RBC Dominion Securities. And, we talked for a bit. And he said, talk to your wife and, let me know if you would like to come over to RBC Dominion Securities. So think of it this way. Here we're talking about my entire my family's financial future. And we have to decide whether we keep it at 𝗲𝗻𝗻𝗪 𝗪𝗏𝗧 or move to RBC Dominion Securities. So that's a huge, huge decision. And I'm just going to go to chat again. How long of a discussion do you think my wife and I had to decide whether we keep it at 𝗲𝗻𝗻𝗪 𝗪𝗏𝗧 or move things to Dominion Securities? How long do you think that discussion was? And again, we're talking about my entire financial wealth, or my family's financial wealth. 5 hours, okay, 1 day, absolutely realistic numbers there. Couple of days, perfect. Actually, it was 5 minutes. That's all it took. Because of the relationship we had with my financial wealth advisor and how much trust I had developed in him in building that relationship. And over 90% of those clients that he held at 𝗲𝗻𝗻𝗪 𝗪𝗏𝗧 moved over to RBC Dominion Securities. 5 minutes, that's all it took. So that's the importance of building those communication skills and building and making those relationships and developing trust, those soft skills that will carry you into the future. So what are soft skills? I mean, these, I'm just going to list them all here, are really important things that you need to hold on to. Communicate effectively. I'm not going to go through them all, but as I mentioned, relationship development, empathy, which is showing care and compassion, decision making, this art of storytelling. And that's, again, a whole other workshop that if you want it, that was my first TEDx speech, was on storytelling. The critical thinking skills, and all of this leads to the motivation that guides you to what you would like to do. Now, the challenge, though, I find with building those relationships, and I get this because I've had a lot of people come to my office saying they have to get to a networking event. Sam, how do I engage into a conversation? First thing I do is I stop them and I say, okay, let's not call it a networking event. Could we call it a relationship building event? Now, how do you stand out amongst the crowd? Because there's going to be a lot of people at this event, but how do you stand out without looking ridiculous, silly, obnoxious? But how do you become an individual that people will talk to? Well, number one, and this is the biggest thing about building those relationships, is don't look for that impressive question. Do you know that I get a lot of people asking me saying, I have to go to the networking event, which I correct them and say, well, no, it's a relationship building event. And they're like, well, so what's my first question I should ask? Think of it this way. So Leslie, you're my organizer here. Let's say, I come to your place for a visit, knock on the door, and you open the door. Is the very first question you ask me, Sam, could you please describe to me the importance of relationship building and how that helps with regards to the development of, the soft skills? Like, what are those things that I should be doing? Is that the first thing you're going to actually ask me? I hope.
Absolutely not. I think that's a mouthful. You don't really get to, the other person is completely just, they're expecting, you know, a hi, hello.
Yeah.
And instead you just bombard them with questions.
No, and exactly, Leslie, to your point, I hope that the first question is, well, Sam, it's lovely to see you. How are you? Tell me, how was your day? Or, you know, I believe you're back east. I'd be like, oh, how was your flight? You know, any number of things. But don't look for that impressive question. That's not why people are there. They're there to engage in a conversation. And the key thing is the conversation is guided, funny enough, by you. Now, the most important thing I say is listen and observe. You know, if I come to your school at Western to a relationship building event and I'm walking around, hopefully the first question that one of your participants will ask me, or you, Leslie, is, oh, are you an alum of Western University? And it's like, oh, no, actually, I graduated from Simon Fraser University. And then the first question you can ask me is, oh, well, what was that experience like? Tell me about SFU. Oh, well, then I go into this long story of, you know, here's what SFU's like and what our school's like. And then I'll say, well, you know, Leslie, tell me about Western. And next thing you know, you and I are engaging in a conversation. Ask the easy question, listen and observe. And, you know, you'll find that you are actually in a conversation. Now, also, it's about understanding who you are before you get to this event. So, you know, think of it this way. You know, I know that in Western, you know, at Western right now, it's cold. In Vancouver, it's cold. But, you know, really understanding who you are, building that personal brand. So let's say it's summertime and there's a need for you to buy a pair of flip-flops. Well, you got the corner store. And do you know what? The corner store, they actually sell food, lottery tickets, fried chicken, hardware, coffee, cigarettes, and then you have Starbucks. So again, Leslie, I'm going to pick on you because it's easy and I can ask you. Leslie, would you buy a pair of flip-flops from Starbucks?
You know, I think I'd be a little confused. Probably not. I've never, you know, I think that's just not very on brand for them.
Yeah, well, I mean, what does Starbucks sell?
Coffee, snacks, mostly drinks.
I'm sure you could probably buy 2 croissants and wear them as a flip-flop maybe, but that's about it. Okay. But here's the thing. The reason I shared this analogy here is oftentimes, you know, we would never go to Starbucks to buy a pair of flip-flops because we know they're tea, coffee, food related items. The corner store may have those items. Now, people may, and what you really need to do is become that Starbucks brand. What people would say is, yeah, but isn't it better to be the grocery store because you offer so much? Here's the thing. People aren't out there to look around and shop around. They want to go to where they know the reliability of the product lies. So start building your brand as a Starbucks. Now, it's always interesting because in my class, I make everyone write a personal statement and I tell them, you are not defined by what you do. You're defined by who you are. So remember, you're not defined by what you do. You're defined by who you are. So who am I? It's a question my students struggle with. Let me share with you, if you and I meet at an event, or when I'm delivering or speaking as a guest on a podcast, very often they say, well, who's Sam? Here's how I introduce myself. I'm guided by 5 key things in life: servant leadership, story sharing, activator igniter, champion enabler, and community do-gooder. Those 5 things have enabled me to help individuals, teams, organizations, nonprofits, and educational institutions to their pinnacle best. But it's also enabled me to become a speaker and a storyteller, a writer and blogger, an educator, a mentor and a coach, a problem solver, an entrepreneur, a community activator. An introduction like that is much more far-reaching than what majority of the people might say. Well, I'm at SFU, I'm going for my bachelor's in business with a degree in finance. I like working with people, I like numbers, etc. Great, but so is everyone else at this event. Try to make yourself unique by coming up with an introduction that is tailored to you. What that creates is this voice within to be louder than the noise around you, because now you have this level of confidence. I don't know about you, but I've been to events where someone has walked into the room, they haven't said a word, but there's something about them that they hold that is engaging. And that's the voice within louder than the noise around you. It's all about creating this by exploring, asking people, getting feedback from them, and reflecting on who you are. Now, how do you figure who you are? I'm going to provide you the tools, which I call the 5 core elements. So I already shared with you that there are 5 things that guide and direct me in life: servant leadership, story sharing, activator igniter, champion enabler, and a community do-gooder. This is my foundation. Right now, I'm working on 13 projects. All 13 of those projects hit 5 out of 5. When an opportunity emerges, I compare it to those 5 things. This is how I've become an author and a writer, now a screenplay writer, as well as an educator. Those things were never goals of mine. And this is where I often share as well, like, I don't have goals, I have intentions. See, to me, goals are very linear. You set a point where you start and a point where you end. What if an opportunity emerges that does not align with your goals? Do you give up the goal or the opportunity? It's very absolute. Instead, I say an opportunity emerges, I compare it to the 5 things you see here. And if it hits 5 out of 5, I have to do it. So why this? Think of it this way. To build a house, we need a solid foundation. To build a life, we need a solid foundation. Now, we pay people to come and inspect the house to make sure the foundation is secure. When have we created a foundation in our life? The reason I say this is so important, and why I've worked with, right from high school students to CEOs, is to say that we have this narrative where we go to school, maybe we do a finance course and we do really well in the finance course. Next thing you know, as a result of that, you do more finance courses. You're like, wow, this really feels right. Well, you do your co-ops. Next thing you know, you get a job in a bank, entry-level job. 3 years later, maybe you slide over to commercial banking. 5 years later, maybe you're the supervisor. 2 years later, branch manager. 10 years later, maybe you're regional manager. I've had conversations with people who say, I don't know if this was the right journey. Because really what we do is, it's just that natural progression we just embark on. But is this the right journey? And all I'm asking is to start realizing those 5 things you're not willing to compromise in life and career. And you hold that. Now, the first job you get might hit 0 out of 5 or 1 out of 5. What's missing then? Now you can start saying, okay, I think I need to build this into it. Or can you build another aspect of your life, of your 5 core elements into this job? And as you progress along, the objective is you need to try to hit those 5 out of 5. When you hit 5 out of 5, you don't have a job or career, you actually hit fulfillment. Those 13 projects I'm working on, apart from marking and assigning letter grades, which does feel like work, the rest of it, and all those projects I'm working on, do not feel like work. What makes you nervous, though, is how I'm asking you to pick 5 things. Because people say, what if I don't pick the right words? Here's the thing. You start from a point. And as you go through life and career, you change those words. As you change and grow as individuals, I've changed mine. And you don't fit it to the job you're doing. Keep that separate. But you'll find that you can change them as you go along. But okay, it's great. How do you create it, though? How do you come up with the 5 things? The whole thing is about asking why. I always ask, whenever I'm sitting with people, to say, okay, tell me about, your education, like your school. What courses do you really enjoy? And they start telling me. And I ask them, why do you enjoy those courses? What about courses you don't enjoy? Tell me about those and tell me why. And then next thing you know, I'm asking about jobs. Tell me what you like and don't like. Tell me why. What do you like to do in your spare time? Tell me why. What engages you? Why? So for example, oftentimes when I'm doing this exercise, the first thing people say is family. One thing I'm not willing to compromise is family. It's really important to me. And I ask them why, and I keep asking different connotations of why. And they go down and, they'll say relationships and connectedness. And, we keep going down the pathway. And then I come back to it. I said, well, you talked about relationships and connectedness. Instead of family, could we replace that with relationships and connectedness as one of the 5 things you're not willing to compromise? They're like, oh, I guess. And I said, because relationships and connectedness, is that important to you when you're in university? And they're like, oh, for sure. What is that also important in any jobs that you're doing or would like to do? And they're like, oh, it has to be there. What about in your social life? Oh, for sure. So the whole idea is it's all about reflection, introspection, and deep thoughts. It's not an easy exercise to do, as some people may think, but it's a process. But the words need to resonate and reflect who you are. I hope that somewhere in your journey, you get to hit 5 out of 5, because then you've hit fulfillment. So the art of conversation there. Here's some tips and ideas for getting to these relationship building events. Make sure you get there early, because you never know who you can meet. I mean, when I go to teach my class, I don't teach till 10:30, but I'm there at 9:30, and as students are coming in, I sit next to them. How's your day? Like, what's going on? And things like that. But I've also been at events where, I'm there early, walking around, and there's nobody really there talking to me. They're in their little corners. I've also seen individuals and nobody's talking to them. And I find out they're a CEO of a company and they're the keynote speaker and nobody's there talking to them. The second point, it's about quality over quantity. Don't run around trying to meet as many people as possible, grabbing as many business cards. It's about the quality of that engaging conversation. And that quality engaging conversation is going to lead into something in the future. And the third part, give them a reason to want your business card. After disengagement can sometimes be a bit of a challenge. And you thank them and say, I really enjoyed this conversation. Do you have a business card? I'd love to maybe have an opportunity to connect with you on LinkedIn or whatever. Give them a reason also to want your business card. Also, look interested. I mean, there's times where I'm talking to an individual and all of a sudden they're just sort of glancing around the room. They're like listening to me, but they're seeing, okay, who else might be more interesting? Try to give your attention to the person that is there before you. Please do not bring out your cell phone unless you're exchanging contact information. Again, that's even when you're sitting there having coffee. What the interesting thing is, oftentimes when I'm sitting with people one-on-one and we're sitting there having coffee, that phone is not even on the table and I haven't even asked them. They know not to bring it out. So I said already, speak to someone standing around. Just go up and start asking them, how's your day? Or, what brought you to the event? Remember, listen and observe. And it doesn't matter who they are. You don't know who can help you. Do you know that the servers, I talk to them. I talk to the bartenders. I talk to volunteers who are organizing the event. You don't know who you're going to meet. Now, LinkedIn is a very powerful tool, and I hope that you've got LinkedIn, and if not, it's a good opportunity to get it. This is where you can build these relationships. It doesn't have to be regional. It could be regional, national, international. But you learn about opportunities of jobs that are available. What are people doing? And you create your professional profile so that it's an opportunity for people to engage and connect with you. Now, if you send me a LinkedIn request, because I get anywhere from 1 to 5 per day, and they sort of drop into a bin, and or maybe on a weekend or early morning, if I'm up and I have nothing to do, I'll go in and start cleaning that up. But if you were to send me a personal message to say something to the extent of, hi, Sam, I attended the Illuminate Universe conversation at Western. I really enjoyed the conversation. Yeah, lie to me if you didn't enjoy it, but tell me you enjoyed it. And, I really would like to connect. Or anything that you can say about that person that you met at an event. There's a greater chance they're going to connect with you because you sent a personal message, as opposed to the generic, hi, Sam, let's connect. Now, let's slide into the written communication, because this is also an important part, the verbal, but also the written communication. So this is what we call the hierarchy of media richness. And what we mean by this is, if you look at the bottom, it's considered the situation. Is it routine and clear or non-routine and ambiguous? to, how rich should the media be? Should it be rich, meaning more face-to-face, or lean, where you just send them some information? And you can see there's a spectrum of opportunities that are here. So think of it this way. If something is very complicated, email is not the way to do it. If something is exceptionally simple, don't do face-to-face, because you're just wasting everybody's time. And that's why you see the overload and oversimplified zone. It's a way to keep in mind, which media method should I be using? Because if something is complicated and you're just sending emails back and forth, and it just keeps going back and forth, could you have resolved it with a video conference or a face-to-face? Potentially. So this is just a nice way for you to realize which medium should I use. Now, here's some basics on the written communication skills and things. Less is more. So in other words, try to articulate it and summarize really what's important that you're trying to get your point across. Now, write with your recipient in mind. Like whenever I'm writing an email, again, if it's personal or work or whatever, I always keep them in mind. And how are they going to receive this message? And, what should I be putting in it? And who is this audience? In other words, is it professional? Is it someone who's senior in the organization? Is it a friend? But who's the audience that's going to see your note or your message, written communication? And that's where it could be external partners, coworkers, upper management, friend or family. Each one of those you would do differently based on who they are. Now, what makes a message effective? It has to be clear. Like, in other words, make it so that it's easy to understand and interpret. Like, I just had a note the other day from somebody who sent me 2 or 3 messages on LinkedIn. And my response back was, so what exactly are you asking of me? Because it was not clear at all. Concise. Try to use the maximum meaning using as many keywords as possible so it's easy to understand. So clear, concise. Comprehensive. Does it cover everything that you need to so there's no ambiguity here? Is it complete? Do we have enough information handy to evaluate the meaning behind it? And correct. Is it free of errors so that you've sent something that looks professional? Now, poor writing, it's important, because poor writing, it's going to cost. Because if you just give me a whole bunch of stuff like this gentleman did yesterday, it's going to take a ton of time for me to read and interpret. Here I am building the final exam for my course. I'm doing my office hour at the same time. And this person sending me messages, it was about 3-4 messages on LinkedIn. And what you're doing is you're taking time away from what I'm trying to work on. It requires more time for revision, because if you don't write it properly, you got to keep going back and revising it. It confuses the reader. That's what happened to me yesterday, because I'm not sure what you're looking for. And it delays what you need to figure out what's the meaning behind it. So you want to avoid the delays. Now, good writing saves time because it's easy to read and respond. It's clear and concise, as I said earlier. It will save money because you're being more efficient, and it doesn't mean that it has to keep going back and forth. Saves energy because it reduces misunderstandings and any questions that may emerge. And it builds this goodwill because it shows that you're being very professional in how you're doing this. Now, here's a technique that you can use that calls payback. Realize purpose. What does the message need to do? So why am I sending it? Audience. Who is my audience and how are they going to feel about this message? What information am I going to include? The benefits around it. So why are they doing it? The objections. Are there anything negative that may be interpreted or misinterpreted? And context. How will what I'm writing affect the reader's response? So payback is an interesting way to do this. Now, I've got this in more details, but in lieu of time, I'm just going to leave this here for a second for people to stop the video so that they'll be able to observe even the finer details of payback. And there's the next slide about the benefits, objections, and context. that again, you could just stop the video and just interpret it even further to read all the points. Now, there is a process. Plan what you want, understand the situation and audience, like what is the task? So plan your writing, draft it. So you put your initial thoughts down. Don't worry about grammar, spelling, format, etc., but draft it. Then rewrite it by reading through it and see if there's any changes you want to make. And it's important in an email or document to get someone else to scan it, especially if it's something very important. Have them scan it so that they know that there's no errors. Emails, which we get a ton of, can be problematic. I want to share with you. So start down below where it says subject, re-meeting in the bottom part. Okay, this is a real email that I got from someone. Okay, sounds great. Let's put it for August 6th, Tuesday, Burnaby at 10 a.m. I hope nothing comes up to cancel it since it's going to be a month later and many things can happen until then, but I'm okay to meet you in a week of August. We shall reconfirm the appointment as we get closer to it, right? Then just above it, I said, hi, just looking at my calendar, I have a reception to attend late night on Monday. Does August 7th or 8th work? Sorry, I should have seen that. If not, afternoon of July 6th. Here's the response, which is at the very top. You must have meant afternoon around 2 or 3. In any case, I don't want the meeting anymore. It's okay, but thanks for the offer and the help. I wanted to keep in touch with the SFU's business community, but not at a cost of meeting on a Saturday afternoon. There's not even school on Saturday, is there? On Saturday, people sleep late and drink beer. Okay. How do I respond to this message? Is it a joke? Are they serious? Do not do emails like this. Fortunately, when I replied back, I just said, I'm very sorry. Like, I should have, seen the dates and times. I hope that, we can reschedule. And then they did reply that, oh yeah, no, I was just kidding. But it did concern me at the beginning because I thought that they were being very serious. Email is not a good mechanism. So be very careful when you write emails. So bad email examples, you forget to add the attachments. And then somebody says, was there something else here? Doing a reply all, like this one, I think frustrates people when, you get a reply all and then somebody just replies to everybody again. And in your inbox, you've got all these reply alls. So just reply back to the person who sent it. And also, maybe there's someone who's not supposed to be on the list and you did a reply all. That can be very embarrassing. I have to admit that's happened once to me where I've sent it out and realized it. Copy and paste, but forget to change key information that may manipulate or change the context of the messaging. Too many forwards, and it just goes all the way down, and you're trying to find where you need to go. Misspelled words, and this happens a lot by using devices. Try to make sure you just proofread it before you send it. And repeated words, like, and I think one of the pet peeves I have, which is misspelled words or repeated words, is people use not going to, but gonna, wanna, shoulda. Like, I don't know, it's too much of a slang for me, especially if it's a professional email. And being too casual, sorry, gonna, wanna, or LOL, or ha ha ha, unless you really know the person. What you should do, include 1 or 2 word topic in the subject line. I can't tell you how important that subject line is. I mean, I'm teaching 4 classes. I tell my students, tell me which class. So Biz 272. I know it's organizational behavior now, but I got 2 sections, and just put D100 or D200 so I know which class you're coming from. But in anything you do, keep the subject line very specific. Always include a greeting, depending again on how important this is or the relationship you have. Oftentimes, if I'm sending a note to the people at Illuminate Universe, it's like, hi, and because I've got that relationship. And use business language, spell check, reread, and please don't use abbreviations unless they know what the abbreviations are. And formatting. You always want to format it as you would your business letter so it looks professional. Now, persuasive arguments. You're going to have a situation in the future, or maybe already, where you have to build an argument or a case around something. And how do you build your case around this? Now, I call it the 3 yeses. Here's a tool that you can use to help you in the process. And Leslie, I'll just call on you again. So Leslie, let me ask you, are you unsure of your journey in life at this point? Would you say?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay. Are you tired of people telling you what to do in life and, journey?
Um, yes, sometimes yes.
Okay. And if I had the tools to help you realize your journey, would that be important to you?
Yes, that would be.
Okay, I have a workshop that I deliver. I'll send you the details and then you can register for it because already this sounds very important to you. Not that I'm going to do that, don't worry. But this is an example of the 3 S's. And for those of you who are listening, here's a secret for you that you can use against your parents. Like if they want you to be an accountant, but you want to be something else, build your case, do a PowerPoint for them, and do it where you give them the 3 yeses and say, well, and you make it so that they're easy, obvious questions that they can respond yes to, or anything that you want to use in a persuasive argument. It builds the context of getting them on board because it's hard for them to say no now once they've agreed to 3 yeses. It's a sales tactical tool. Now, persuasive writing is gather your facts, research the data. You could do primary data gathering, focus groups, interviews, observations, and surveys. The secondary might be then backing it up with internet searches or article reviews. Maybe you want to be a digital marketer and your parents want you to be an accountant. Well, then you show them that this is how much a digital marketer makes. Here's what an accountant makes. And, you start building that. So you want to say, here's what your position is. Again, who's your audience that you want to convince or persuade? Make sure you've done your research because that's what you want to deliver. And think about the structure of how you want to deliver this. And then you build the argument in so that it becomes a solid component and a solid way that you can do this. And then support the argument with any of the internet searches and article reviews. Now, last, I'm going to share with you presentation skills as we're getting closer to the end. You're going to be asked to present in life. Now, people will respect and admire those who can speak. Employers value people who can just get up and speak or be at least competent in sharing. And this is how you can become a great speaker. Now, there are 10 fears that we have in life. And this was a research project done and of what people are fearful of. So the 10th greatest fear is dogs. 9th is loneliness, flying, death, sickness, deep water, financial problems, insects and bugs, and heights. Now, I'm sure as you go through this, you may wind up saying, well, I'm afraid of this, this, this. The number one fear people had was getting to speak before a group, to get up and speak before a group. And it's fascinating because the biggest fear you have, well, you'd rather be in a coffin dead than to get up and speak before a group. So it's interesting because my story is I was terrible at public speaking when I was in university. This is what I do for a living now. And a lot of it has to do with what I'm going to share with you. But all it is communication skills and how we get that message from the sender to the receiver. Here's what I would say is to build, and this is what helped me to do it. Do as many as possible. Build up your confidence, because the idea is the more that you deliver, the more comfortable you're going to get. And what's always fascinating is, when I tell people after they do their presentations in my class, how was it? They said, well, it was okay, but here's what I forgot. Well, don't tell me what you forgot. I don't know what you forgot. So build your confidence. And then always have a plan B and C. I mean, if you're delivering a PowerPoint and the projector burns out, make sure you have all your PowerPoint presentations on paper format in front of you so you can just deliver that. Always look around the room just so it becomes engaging and interesting for the people, because as I teach my class, oh man, I'm walking up and down the aisles, I'm looking around left and right, up and down, just to make people feel like they're all part of this. The fourth point is very important. Talk about something you know. I mean, I've been asked to deliver workshops or presentations, and they said, well, you're great at presenting. Well, we need you to do this. And I'm like, actually, I'm not comfortable with that topic. And I turn it down because it's got to be something that I know. If it's on personal branding, communication skills, storytelling, leadership, any number, mentorship, any number of these types of topics, yeah, I can do that easy. The next point is make stories into your mix the stories into your point across, because stories help people to relate to you. Make it interactive. Build in exercises. Today in my class on conflict and negotiations, I dedicated 30 minutes of a 1 hour and 45-minute work class. About 30-40 minutes was a simulation on conflict and negotiations. At the end, when I said, tell me about what you enjoyed today, they all said, oh my gosh, like that simulation was so much fun. But I learned as a result of doing it. Enjoy yourself. If you don't enjoy it, no one else is. And I tell my students, or people say that you enjoy teaching. Well, if I enjoy teaching the subject, it makes it easier for the students to accept it. And finally, speak with passion. I mean, to no end, it's like, and I'm sure we've had those instructors that don't speak with passion, and how difficult it is to just stay connected to the content. Here's what you don't do. Don't go over time. I mean, I've been given 50 minutes and I'm trying to stick to the 50 minutes. Don't have everything scripted. Like, in other words, where everything you're just basically reading off the PowerPoint or the paper, because then it's like, why am I just listening to you when I could be reading it? Also, the heavy data and facts. I've sat through presentations where all they're doing is giving me data and facts, and it just glosses over at a point. You can certainly throw data and facts in, don't get me wrong, but back it up with your stories or what we're talking about. Don't speak too fast. There are times where we forget the audience is there because we're so engaged with the topic, we're speaking too fast. And definitely try to use emotions. I've seen presenters where they speak in one tone and it is painful to see. The ums and ahs are interesting because an or an ah is a pause. And I've heard speakers who go, well, don't go over time. If you're given 5 minutes, stick to 5 minutes. Have everything scripted. Have heavy data and facts. So an or an ah, you'll hear, if observe this, you'll see a lot of presenters who would do ums and ahs. All it is a pause. And throughout this entire workshop today, there's been a lot of ums or ahs in my mind. But instead of verbalizing it, I take a breath. And that's what I've trained myself to do. This is why rarely will you hear an or an ah come from me, okay? And for PowerPoint, I could, again, deliver a whole workshop on public speaking PowerPoint skills, but really what I want to narrow this down to is less text, more emphasis. You can use bullet points. Look at the bullet points, and that gives you the cue of what you want to share, much like what I've done today. So less text. It's about your thoughts. Think of it this way. Your PowerPoint complements your presentation. I mean, oftentimes when I'm delivering not just a class or this type of workshop, there's times where all I'm using is an image and maybe a title, and I just look at it and I know exactly what I want to talk about. For example, I had to speak in Zimbabwe in 2018. I had to speak in Bahrain in 2018. I built my presentation in the airport, got up, they wanted 1 hour. I literally, to 1 hour, delivered this workshop unrehearsed and just delivered that because of the fact that I was comfortable with the content of the content. And don't make it fancy and distracting. Make it simple and straightforward. And I am getting closer to the end. There's a couple of things I want to share with you, and then I'll open it up to Q&A. So what defines you? And I'm going to share this story. Oftentimes we're looking for the big wins, but understand it's the small victories that are really going to get you where you need to go. So I had a group of students who went to Washington State for an academic competition. And there were teams from all around the world. So you have about 100 people, the students, the coaches, the volunteers. And they were also invited to the offices of JP Morgan. So here you have the senior executives and all these students. They're engaging in a conversation and a reception. And at the end, everyone said their thank yous and goodbyes. My coach came back after everyone left, and he saw the senior most person, and they started talking. But while they're talking, the senior most person is taking cups from the tables or wherever and moving it to the sideboard. And my coach said, you know, I know you must be really busy, but there are people who do this, clean it up. And he said, absolutely. But you know what? I would never leave it at home. I would never leave it for someone to clean up after me. But here's something else that's really important. I had 100 intelligent, articulate, young minds in front of me. If one of those students would have picked up their cup and saucer and moved it over to the sideboard, that's the student I want to talk to. Now, with me sharing this doesn't mean you get to an event and you grab your cup and saucer and you start saying very loudly, okay, I'm just going to put my cup and saucer on the sideboard, looking for a job, and oops, my resume dropped on the floor. It's the actions. Do the things quietly, humbly, and you'd be amazed at what people observe and what they watch. The same thing happened. I've got this one student. Right now, she's not in my class. We met about a month and a half ago. Every Tuesday, we have lunch together. And already we're working on a project. She has earned my respect because of what I've seen in her. Wasn't anything big, but she's just earned that respect based on who she is and those little things she's done. And the last thing I'm going to give you, and then we'll throw it out to question and answer, is this puzzle analogy. So I usually walk around with puzzle pieces, and I'm known for those puzzle pieces. I've given about 5,000 pieces. And maybe one day, Leslie, I'll meet you and I can give you a piece of a jigsaw puzzle. But think of it this way. If I give you a single piece of a jigsaw puzzle, what can you do with one piece? Not much, right? Because it's one piece. That's what we feel like. We feel like that single piece of a jigsaw puzzle. We don't know where we fit in. We don't know what the bigger picture is. But here's how I'm going to make the ordinary extraordinary, the transformation from transaction. So if I give you, Leslie, a piece of my single piece of my jigsaw puzzle, instead of looking at the single piece of a jigsaw puzzle, let's focus on the satchel that I have this in, or the puzzles that I hold. If I give you a piece of my puzzle, do you realize my puzzle will never be complete without you? Do you realize how important you are to my community, my puzzle? People forget the significance that they hold. And it's interesting because, again, I've given 5,000 pieces in the world to remind people how important they are. I've got people telling me it's taped to the mirrors. It reminds them someone said I matter. It's traveled in backpacks around the world. It's in curio boxes. It's in wallets. 10 years later, I'll be at an event and someone pulls it out saying, look, I still hold this puzzle piece. It's a reminder of this connection. We are all connected to each other. And whose puzzles are you connected to? So I want to say thank you for the opportunity of sharing today. And just before I go into question and answer, I want to share 2 quotes that I live by. The first quote is, obstacles are the necessary bricks on the road to success. Do not fear the obstacles, embrace the obstacles, because that's where those lessons emerge from. Ambiguity and uncertainty is not a scary place if you collaborate and work with each other. And the second valuable quote that I'm going to share with you is, everyone's life is an autobiography. Make yours worth reading. Do you realize every single one of you listening to this is a living story? So go out and realize the significance of your autobiography, because you're building it word by word, page by page, section by section. So I want to say thank you for the opportunity to share. Here's my contact information, and I'm happy to open it up to any question and answers.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Sam. I actually do have a question. I hope you don't mind if I just unmute and ask. Yeah, so you mentioned communication, presentation, and relationship building. That was kind of a common theme. I find that now we have to do a lot of that online or over Zoom. And what you did today, it was an incredibly engaging presentation. I was wondering, do you have any tips on how to keep the person on the other end engaged, even if you're not there in person, even if you can't do it? It's very difficult to communicate through a screen. So I was wondering, how do you do that?
Well, and it was interesting because I had to start teaching online as a result of COVID. And what was interesting is, I never looked at it as a negative or a challenge. I took it on as, okay, this is what's happening. I actually had higher level of engagement online than I did in the classroom, mainly because, people had their cameras off. And when I asked a question, I say, go to chat. I couldn't even keep up with the responses, which was beautiful. Now I do that in class. But I think what I would say, if you're engaged or you're having to do a Zoom conversation, a couple of things is, obviously look interested and in that as a receiver of that information, nod or make it like you have, and when that you're engaged. So when somebody says, okay, yeah, maybe put your comments in chat. Yeah, definitely go and respond in chat, because what I do is I acknowledge anybody who goes into chat. As the person who's delivering, I mean, breakout rooms, try to make, with exercises. And I mean, I do an exercise on perceptions that actually works out to be something that works beautifully when it's virtual and online. There's so many resources and tools that are available that you can do things online. So I would just say research, and depending on what you have to deliver, try to incorporate a couple of activities. Ask those easy, simple questions. I mean, I remember in my class, even starting out with polls, like I would say, pineapple, does it belong on pizza? And then I say, okay, go answer this. And then I go into chat and tell me what's your, besides the poll, go into chat and tell me. And I was having battles going like, no, pineapple does not belong in pizza. Here's why. And somebody responds back, sure it does. And what do you know about pizza? You don't have any. And it goes back in a lighthearted way. So make it engaging that way. Just activate it. Any other questions?
Great tips. Thank you so much.
Well, and if anything, I'm just seeing, thank yous, and I appreciate that. So thank you, Leon and Oriana, for saying that. I appreciate that. Yeah. And who knows, maybe there are no questions.
I think that just means you had a very, very detailed presentation. You just covered all the bases.
Or Leslie, people fell asleep.
No, I don't think so. Personally, I thought it was very engaging. So I wanted to thank you for that. I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone else here did too. A little note just before everyone goes, I just wanted to plug the ongoing Zero to Hero Hack Question raffle. So if anyone here wants to enter in that, just please make sure to comment a takeaway from this workshop. I'll leave the Zoom link in the chat. Oh, we do actually have a question.
And I'm going to stop the share.
For sure.
Yeah. You could unmute if you like.
Thomas said it in chat, so I can read it out if you would like. Yeah, so Thomas said, do you know how I can overcome the fear of presenting?
Sure, Thomas. And that's, again, I was in the same shoes that you were wearing. And like I said, I think really talk about something that you're comfortable sharing. So Thomas, either in chat or, if you want to verbalize it, is there something like, do you like sports? What type of food do you like? Maybe drop that into chat or, verbalize it if you want to unmute. Tell me something easy about Thomas. Or what courses are you taking? What are you interested in? I'm not sure if Thomas is typing or if he's just like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to make you say anything, so don't worry, Thomas. Okay. Well, maybe if he is typing or not, what I would say is, let's say if you and I, if you had to do a presentation, like for example, I mean, personal branding is something I'm very comfortable talking about. I've got stories along those lines, etc. I mean, Thomas, it could be something where maybe, I look at it this way. Oftentimes I ask students, are you ready to mentor someone? And they're like, absolutely not. I mean, I'm a student who's just starting out. And then I often say, okay, but if a first-year student started at Western right now, like a high school student coming in, would you be able to help them? They're like, well, yeah, I can do that. So, Thomas, it could be even where you share your experiences of starting at Western. if that's where you're going to school. And what were some of the things that you encountered, and what do you wish you would have known that you didn't know? Okay, he's interested in computer science and math. And and so even with computer science and math, Thomas, I don't know much about computer science. And then I would say, well, Thomas, why don't you tell me, do a 5-minute presentation on, an aspect of computer science. And I mean, that should be relatively easy for you to build a presentation around or a conversation around. So that's where I would say, find things that you're comfortable sharing and build your confidence. Look for those opportunities. I know it can be uncomfortable. And look, when I started, I was terrible. Fortunately, the first person who asked me to speak somewhere wasn't at the second place, because they would never have asked me to come and speak at the second place. So just realize that it's just about breaking the barrier, getting comfortable and sharing. I hope that helped. Okay. Perfect. And Thomas, you can connect on LinkedIn if you're wanting to. You've got my contact information, and we can, you can send me any other questions or things like that there too. Any of you can, by the way.
Thank you so much. I think that is the end of our questions. So once again, I'd like to thank you for coming here and speaking. For sure, I will be connecting with you on LinkedIn and asking all my questions.
And Leslie, maybe getting a piece of a jigsaw puzzle.
Oh, thank you. I'll also carry that one I'll carry that one in my wallet.
Good.